Hello, everyone. I'm Mason Schwaber here on the Moto Vibe Show with my co-host Reese Clayson. Reese, say what's up, man?
How's it going, guys?
And here today we are with Cole Thompson, the 250 West Coast rider. Cole, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, for sure, man. No need to go slow with anything. Tell us, tell us about your season, man. How's it going so far? You're used to the Canadian side of racing, so what's it like being in America through the first two rounds of Supercross?
So far, so good. It's a privateer effort, so expectations were kind of just get in the main and go from there. And so far, been able to get a 14th and 12th, trying to build off those two finishes going into San Diego this weekend.
Yeah, and to kind of go off that, so it's got to be kind of hard going into these first couple rounds because you made the switch from the 450 to the 250, and you switched brands from KTM to Yamaha. Like, how's that been, and how's preparing for the races going with that?
Yeah, it was a last minute deal. I've been with KTM for 9 years on the factory program in Canada. Had a great, I guess you'd call era with them, and that kind of came to an end back in August. I knew I wouldn't be with the team, so I had either the decision to look for a new team in Canada or ultimately just retire. But something inside of me decided to take a new route and come back to the States, especially since I did it for my first 3 seasons of pro, and then another 2 years in 2016 and 2017 that figured if I was going to come back to Supercross and do it, I would do it this year, at least get my feet wet. So I figured do the first 6 rounds of West Coast on 250, maybe transition into the 450 once it gets to the East. So far, like I say, it was not a hard transition. I think the hardest part for me was just getting mainly parts for these bikes in such a short amount of time. I had from the time I left Canada was like the end of the first week of December to get down to South Carolina where I initially started riding Supercross. I had no parts for them. They were completely stock. One of the bikes had a slip-on pipe, and that was it. So I had to kind of figure out where I was going to get a motor and suspension. Luckily, suspension I got done right on Christmas Day. It pretty much showed up. So I had Supercross suspension from that point forward, and then I had to figure out still getting a motor. I luckily got that as soon as I got to California. I got a team from Canada to give me a motor, and basically showing up to Anaheim, I didn't even have a pipe till Anaheim. So I got a pipe at Anaheim, had a motor and suspension, and we just went and raced. And I've had bikes much better in the past, and I've had bikes worse. And so far, man, the Yamaha, like I'm not even getting help from Yamaha. These are my brother's bikes. The Yamaha is a pretty sick bike. 250 wise, it is a sick 250. My practice bike's bone stock with a slip-on pipe and suspension that I've been switching back and forth since I only got one set. And man, no complaints. The thing's pretty cool. And being on KTM for so long, I had a good idea of what I was looking for. And right away, I thought that the bike was turnkey.
Nice, man.
So,
And oh, you got it, Reese.
so I ride KTM's personally, and I've ridden a Yamaha before. And did it feel to you that the Yamaha is almost a smaller, kind of
Yeah.
shorter in length kind of bike? Did that throw you off at first?
I felt like I said when I first rode them, I said I felt like I was going back to a Super Mini. Being that the KTM chassis is a bit longer too, it felt compact, and I liked it for Supercross. I haven't really put time on the outdoors, but for Supercross, that was the feeling I wanted. I'd ridden Honda in the past, and I was always big on the way that the Honda handled, and the Yamaha has similar handling. At least the 250 does has similar handling, and I thought it was short, smaller, and it felt like I could muscle it around a little easier. The only thing I'll say is it feels fatter, if that makes sense. Like it feels, but
Yeah,
I mean, and by now I'm used to it. At first, it felt like it was a little bit wider, but
yeah,
not crazy.
yeah. That makes sense. And I noticed that
Yeah.
too. Like it was kind of a fatter, stockier bike almost.
Yeah.
And like the KTM's made for almost a taller rider. So that's why I asked. Go ahead, Mason.
Yeah.
Back to the results, two top 15s in the first two rounds, obviously for you. And, I'm sure you're striving more and more and reaching for those top 10s. Has this, we're two rounds in. Is this where you want to be at in points? What's your goal by the end of the season?
Yeah. I think goal right now is to get to that top 10. I feel like the guys that I'm racing with that are just ahead of me and the guys that are just behind me, we're all pretty close in pace. I think the top 10's not, I wouldn't say out of reach. So I think for me, it's top 10 this year is a realistic goal with the bikes in the situation I'm in. I'll be stoked. Anything better than that, keep it consistent. If I can keep adding, decent rides. Last 2 weekends, it was more so getting used to that pace. Like last weekend, it really hit me that, I was riding better, but then I also, kind of wouldn't say like, I was short on breath more or less early on in that race. And it kind of took me a bit to get my steam back. So main thing is just trying to get better in the main event to get closer to the top 10, but also get better at just the whole main event. Like the heat race, I felt like I did better. The main event was still just as bad for both of them. And I'm not saying bad. I'm just saying they're both kind of like I was winded and just trying to get through it more or less.
Right, definitely. And I think one of the major differences between the racing in Canada and the racing in America from, watching both, I'd say that you cut off your pace by a lot. In America, you're losing plenty of positions in a race. And to where if not the fastest rider in Canada, if you lose your pace, you're still in the top 3, top 5 position, most likely, due to there aren't as many fast riders or riders at your level. Everyone in that 250 main event is competing with you. There's no such thing as a slower or slow rider in that main event. So what's the transition? Has there been any like complications or frustration realizing that from Canada to America, the competition is just stronger and you have to keep up with your pace, or you're sort of screwed?
Yeah, I know exactly. I think there's a depth here. You got the factory guys that I would say is in that group. And then you got the guys that are really good, like, even like a Carson Mumford or a Schwartz. Those guys are really good. Carson Brown. There's so many that I'm thankfully I'm in that mix right there. But the top 22 in America is all good riders, where in Canada it is different as far as the guy that could be 15th works a full-time job. Yep. Shows up on the weekend and goes and race and is a top 15 guy, and hats off to him. Like that's so much respect for that. That's a lot of work, like to do that and be still competitive. But as far as, like you say, there's maybe 5 or 6 guys that are going at pace in Canada. You have a lot more wiggle room as far as if you're having an off day, it's maybe a 6th. If you're having an on day, it's a win. So I agree.
So you've won the last couple like championships in Canada, and obviously the Supercross up there is not kind of the same as down here. Like you don't race in the big stadiums up there. They're kind of more of arena cross style for America, if that makes sense. What's the transition going from like racing that to coming to the States where the stadiums are much bigger and the tracks almost get bigger?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference in America is everything's amplified, whether it's whoops, rhythm sections, everything's big. And when I first started riding Supercross down here again, I thought I had a good idea. And then I showed up at Anaheim and I was like, whoa, like this stuff's a lot bigger than I remember. And going back to our series, it can't be that aggressive due to the fact that I'd say probably 50% of the field is made up of blue collar workers, basically, your weekend warriors. So our tracks are only limited to going so gnarly. Here, like I say, you gotta, I guess, embrace the challenge, and that's kind of what I've done these 2 weekends. I showed up, thought I had a pretty good idea. Anaheim caught me off guard, got through it, and this past weekend, Oakland caught me off guard as far as it was just as technical. I thought maybe it'll be a little bit easier as the series gets going, and I was first 2 practices. I said I was struggling to master the track, like to actually get the rhythms, to get the whoops, everything pieced together to put a whole lap together. Until my 3rd practice, I started putting laps together, and then you're straight into a heat race. So yeah, I agree. The tracks are gnarly, very gnarly.
Yeah, and a lot of people said that, and I noticed that being a racer, like A1 seemed to be very, very technical for the first round of the year. Like it had big whoops, the rhythm sections were big, and I just thought that was surprising for A1.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
One thing I realized, and this is just from a viewer's basis, is I think A1, but especially Oakland, just the track format, and I don't know if you agree, disagree. I thought it was super sketchy at times on those two tracks for the first two beginning rounds. I thought I didn't know if the tracks just weren't designed properly for this early in the season. I think a lot of injuries were caused. I think a lot of injuries did end up happening. So, how would you say you vibed with the track? Did you get along with it, or would you agree that there was some sketchy rhythm sections?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I know for myself, like I consider myself pretty technical rider, and the last weekend that we just did in Oakland, I thought the track was like very tough as far as it didn't show it on. I watched it back on TV, and it was hard to see exactly some of the transitions and some of the rhythms. They looked pretty straightforward, but it was tough to get like for instance, after we cross the start, you do a little double triple and then you turn into that next rhythm. It was hard to get on off triple triple consistently, at least for me it was. And I know a couple other guys struggled, and all throughout the day you seen people clip in over jumping, and it was weird. Like usually in a supercross everyone gets a rhythm down and everyone can do the same thing. This past weekend everybody had different lines that they were taking, especially later as the race progressed. Like I know myself, even I had to switch some of my lines just because it was so inconsistent. I'd be clipping or over jumping, so I just stuck to something more basic. And then you go back and look at lap times, I was like 4 to 5 seconds a lap slower than the leader. But for me, that's what I had to do. Like I didn't feel comfortable sending it every lap on a rhythm that almost killed me the lap before. So that's another thing that like the tracks maybe will get easier as I get more used to it, or it's just everyone's dealing with it and some people are better at those situations.
And see, that's one thing I've noticed is like the 250s, they're obviously younger fields. And I would go as far to say you're a vet in the class because you have plenty of experience and such. And I think some of these young guys get caught up in the fact of trying to win so bad. They make stupid mistakes and crash. Do you agree with that statement? And what do you
Yeah.
like? Do you think the
Yeah,
250s?
I think for some of the kids, it's opportunity. I know for me, I've had a fill in ride on some of those factory teams, and your opportunity is so small that you want to make the most of it. For certain guys, I'm sure it's
Yep.
championship season. I think you look at Shimoda as a championship guy, and he's had some crashes. Um, Maybe like a guy like Hunter Lawrence expects championship. There's probably 5 to 6 guys that expect championships.
Mhm.
Then there's guys that expect podiums, and then there's guys that expect top fives, and then guys like me top 10. And
Yeah.
everyone's got a different goal. I think for these kids coming in, it's either you make it or you break it. And you've seen in the past, there's been guys that have had rides one year and then they're dropped the next year. And it's such a short window. You got to make the most of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as you stack maybe 2 bad races and 3 bad races, you start to panic more and more. And I think that's what you see a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Reese, you got it, man. You got anything?
Um, so you're racing the Supercross. You haven't really said anything about the rest of the year. Are you gonna race the outdoors or what's your plan? If
I
you really
don't even
know.
have plans. To be honest with you, my plan is only as far as getting through the 6th round on the 250. From that point forward, everything I race, it's just kind of a bonus for Supercross wise.
Mhm.
In Canada, I don't have any, I guess, teams or anything lined up for the summer. We'll just have to see if I can piece something together myself, or maybe get something as a fill-in role or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't want to tie myself like for years to come. I don't want to tie myself down to just that series anymore. So
Yeah.
that was the thing going into this year, was if I commit to another team, I'm fulfilled to do those races.
Mhm.
I couldn't necessarily get the support to come down here.
Yeah.
So it was like more so me just trying to break free of that cycle that I've been
Mhm.
in for 9 years, right? And kind of
Yeah.
limited myself to racing the best.
Okay. That's cool. And it's kind of the unknown of being a privateer. You never know when your next move's gonna be. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you never know. I mean, like I say, it could be either a fill-in spot, or it could be a full-time gig, could be wherever. Like I say, just stay ready to race, and whatever cards I'm dealt, we'll go from there.
Cool. 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 Cool.
I think I think one of the biggest questions I thought coming into this interview, and something, you know, I've grown up watching Canadian motocross. I have family, so does Reese, in that industry, that race. I've seen you on a 450 bike and I've seen you on a 250 bike. Would you say your more favorite bike that you think that not only do you perform better on, but that you just prefer riding?
I prefer the 450, to be honest with you. But when I came back down here, looking at the 450s, the field and the Supercross especially, those guys are all legit.
Yep.
I didn't want to even, and it's not disrespecting the 250 split coast. You know, 250 guys are just as good. It's split down the middle. You got 10 factory guys on the west, you got 10 factory guys on the east, or however it jumbles up.
Yeah.
I looked at it as like, I can still ride 250 well. I think I ride 450 as good, if not better. I'll take my chances with, you know, the split coast with split competition kind of thing. And sometimes you'll see in certain years that, like, you know, depending on injuries, sometimes the East Coast or sometimes the West Coast, it stacks up. So I was like, I'll take my chance to 250, get my feet wet. If it goes good, I have the option of riding the 450 on the East. I have a borrowed 450, so I'll put some time on it maybe after I get through Anaheim. If everything's good and I'm healthy, try to race maybe 2 or 3 rounds, 4 rounds, whatever comes my way on the East, and we'll see how that shakes down. But I'd say either bike, I prefer the 450 just because of how I ride. I don't overly charge things, or I'm more of a coaster than a, you know, off and on switch.
Yeah.
Right, definitely. And you know, I think it would be very fun to see you in the 450 class. There's definitely a lot of mid-pack competition with, you know, guys like Alex
LCQ
Martin.
scares me, man.
The
LCQ is aggressive.
The LCQ is and you know, sadly, Cade's in it every time, so we're shaking every time we see Cade in it. So, you know, I believe it's probably the first or second best race every night to watch.
Yeah, I watched it this past weekend, and I was
that takeout at the end.
I couldn't see it from where I was standing, and I watched it back on TV, and I was like, dude, I was like, watching that race, I was like, you would think this is for like a championship. And I mean, to some of these guys, it is. I know, like, even myself, I've never made a 450 main, so to some of these guys, it is like a championship to get in that 450 main. But they send it, man, and hats off to them. I give them a lot of credit, and the guys that are doing it week in and week out, big props.
Yeah, and of course, like you said, you watched the 450 class. So far, what you've seen, who do you think's the front runner in that class
for the championship?
Yeah,
I like the way that Chase Sexton rides, to be honest with you. Like, I would love to have more of his style. But then, like, it's hard to say. Like, you've seen this weekend, I think it was like almost like they flipped the top 10. I think Barsha was the only guy consistent. Yep. I think that's cool, man. In any kind of sport, whether it's you know, your favorite hockey team or whatever, it's cool to see when so many riders can step up to the challenge and see new podiums, see new faces. I think for as it shows, you know, in previous years, you're always going to see eventually the top guys, and I think that the same top guys are going to be the same this year. It's just, you know, the start of the season, but I hope it keeps going like it is, man. I love racing. I mean, my best part about the racing the weekends is just being part of it now. I've watched it obviously since I've stopped racing it, and now that I'm back in it, I'm just as much of a super fan as anybody, and I love coming off and being able to watch the main events either in person or I'll watch them on TV. Like last weekend, I didn't even bother going into the Coliseum. So it's cool, man. It's cool to watch that, and it's cool to see that there's so much talent, not just in the 250 and the 450, and even these amateur ranks. I've been riding out here in California now for a couple weeks and seeing the top amateurs come through. It's very cool.
Yeah. So I meant to ask you this earlier, but being in California and kind of seeing the California setting, is it something you enjoy being out there with all the fast guys, or do you like more of a mellow kind of do your own thing, live at a training facility and ride, or do you like the chaos?
I talked to my buddy about this today. I'm like, I like it for right now because I know I'm only out here for the 6 weeks. I think if I was to stay out here all the time, it'd probably wear down on you. Like, but for me, I'm like, I'm just trying to get, if I see someone going fast, I jump in behind them or try to at least pace them somewhere on the track. So for me, it's great. I think doing it, for a year straight would wear you out. But for me, it's like I see the light, you know what I mean? I know I'm only out here after this weekend, I'm only out here for 3 more weeks. So it's like make the
Yeah.
most of it, gather as much as you can from these guys that are riding. Like even last week before Oakland, I was riding with Ryder DiFrancesco. Kid was kicking my ass to start of the day. And I'm like, dude, this kid's, you know what I mean? Like 17, 16 years old. But I'm like, hey man, he's not competition. He's good rider. Pace off him, you know what I mean? And by the end of the day, getting up to his speed and stuff. And I even thanked him. I was like, man, thanks for bringing me up to speed, learning the rhythms. And I think that's so cool. I don't feel discouraged if I'm getting beat by a kid that's, 14 or 15, 16, whatever their age, because I was once that kid that was, ripping the track. And then, you always can learn from somebody, whether they're older, younger. And I think that's the coolest thing about being out here. It's such a wide variety of riders.
Yeah, and I think being out there definitely is a wide variety of riders. Do you like? I don't know if you watch a lot of the amateur stuff, but what do you think about them doing these Supercross futures? And do you think if you were an amateur today, you would have done them? Do you think, or enjoyed them at least?
I don't know. I watched this weekend and I was actually shocked that they raced on the same track, because it's like whoops everything. You could tell like Ryder was dialed in. I think he won his race pretty convincingly.
Yep.
I feel like some of the other guys is probably where I would be at that age, which is just survive the track. I think some of the guys were just more so just pumped to be out there. But I was also seeing how many guys were at the practice track. Like even today, there's 5, 6 guys riding, and I've seen them all throughout the weeks I've been here. When I got to Oakland, I was surprised on the turnout. I was like, did nobody get the memo that there's in futures, because there's 12 or 13. There wasn't many.
No,
Yeah.
there
And
wasn't.
I was expecting it to be like 30 something, 40 something, because that's an opportunity. If you're going to go pro one day, take those races as an opportunity that no pressure, learn the track, learn what a day is on a Supercross. And maybe there'll be more. And I think, is it Anaheim, second Anaheim, they have one.
Yeah, there's a
Maybe
couple
because,
more. I know.
yeah,
So,
I think there'll be more as it goes on. But for that one, I was shocked that so few guys showed up.
yeah, and I think I looked at doing them personally, but I had an ACL injury over the summer, but so I couldn't do. They have like qualifiers to get into them, so it's pretty hard to
Oh,
like get into the races because
I
they do
didn't know
them in the
that.
they do
I
them in
didn't
the
know that.
fall, and then you
Yep.
don't race until the spring. So like now I could race if I wanted to, but
You're
I
not
missed the
qualified.
qualifier, so I'm
I
not
didn't know
qualified.
that. Okay, that makes sense then. Okay, yeah. Because I was like confused. I was like, why didn't like dang dude?
Yeah,
Like if I was, I mean, even if I wasn't racing pro, I'd at least sign up, if I was just
yeah,
gonna
Oh
ride. But gotcha.
yeah. But
Sweet.
so how's it been being a mechanic, your personal trainer, rider, everything? How's that been?
yeah. The privateer
It's
life.
the privateer. Yeah, I said if I was gonna do it, I was gonna embrace it. The mechanic side of it's been, knock on wood, really, really good. Like mechanical wise, bikes have been staying together. The training side of it's taking a little bit of a dip just because of the travel, the working on the bikes, and then getting more so. I've been focused on getting seat time on the bike is number one right now, a priority, just because I had so little going into the season. So anytime I get a chance to train, I'll get it in. Lately, it's been like just before this call, I just finished working out. I have a rowing machine and a spinner, and that's pretty much the two main things that I have for me right now. But it's honestly for the light class, it's perfect. You gotta stay lean, you gotta keep your cardio up. But yeah, riding's been good, mechanic's been good, truck driving's been tiring, but I mean,
Yeah, that's the
last
worst
weekend was
part.
last weekend was the longest haul of I guess the 6 rounds out here. So
Mhm.
this weekend's San Diego, Anaheim, Phoenix, those are all pretty somewhat local.
Yeah, I mean, the first like 6 rounds have got to be the privateer's dream. I mean, they're all within like
Yeah.
a little range of each other. I
Yeah,
mean, the East
heck
Coast, it's
yeah.
like 15 hours here, 16 back this way. Yeah, so
I wouldn't be
the
doing East. That's what I said. I'm like, I wouldn't be doing East on my own. That's too much
yeah,
driving.
yeah, and
So
and it's not like in California you can't go and ride during the week at a practice track
Yeah,
either. There's
true.
no Supercross tracks, so
That's true.
so
what are you up to in the middle of the weeks when there is a little off day, free day?
I had my first off day where I did nothing, because when I got out to California, I was flat out before Anaheim, getting the motor, getting it into the bike, testing it, putting the graphics on. all the little parts that I picked up. Flat out before Anaheim, flat out before Oakland, just getting seat time because I was lacking so much seat time prior. This week, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a chill day Monday, just kind of washed everything up, got the bike cleaned up. I was like, all right, get the practice bike together and rode today. And it finally feels like I'm caught up to where I can actually take a breath and take in like how cool it is being able to ride Supercross, being able to be in California. For those first 2 weeks, it felt like I was hardly sleeping. I was stressed. I was just trying to get to the race, get through the race, and on to the next one. So now I'm actually taking in a little bit more of a breath, I guess, and soaking in the experience.
Yeah, man, definitely.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So how's the wife been? Is she been a help or is she just the pit board?
Yeah, well, we don't have a pit board. She's been down at the start gate, so she holds the bike. This past weekend, after the heat race, or after the hot lap, I had to run, take a quick pee, so she held the bike there, and then they come out with the board because there's like next to no time. Like I thought I'd have a little bit more time. I'm walking out, and they're like starting to put the board up. I'm like trying to get my gloves on.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so she was a little panicked this weekend, but for the most part, it's been good. She's not the most knowledgeable for bikes, so the bike work falls on me, and then she more or less just has the tools, the pit board we're going to get this weekend, and then we'll be able to, at least, because I said it's hard in the main events to know what position and then what time I'm at. So Anaheim, there was a big board right when you come over the finish. It was up on the stadium. You could see the time, position, who was ahead of me. I was like sick. This week I couldn't see that. I was like, I was trying to like look, and there was no spot, like there was no like triple, or like even where the finish line was, it didn't line up. So I was like trying to look around to at least get a time, and I finally caught a glimpse off that double before the straightaway across the start, and I was like, it felt like it was the end of the race, and it was like still 6 minutes to go. I'm like, dude, tongue in the smokes. I'm like, geez, but we'll get a tip we're going, and then it'll help a little bit, I think, just kind of mentally break down the race for me.
Nice. You got anything else, Mace?
No, man, I think that's about it. It's been a blast having you on, Cole. You know, like I said before the call, you know, this is our first time in a while talking to a Canadian rider, so we appreciate you hopping on. You know, before we end this, is there anyone you'd like to thank?
Just thank the people supporting me, man. The people on social media, it goes a long ways. People like yourself reaching out, and I appreciate you guys taking an interest and giving me the time.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Wish you luck.
No worries, dude. No worries.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Best of luck, my man.
Yep.
Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.